Welcome, everyone, to Murder Moose. Murder Moose, Murder Moose. I'm Rod. And with me, as always, Jerry. What's up, man?
What is up?
Dude, we're talking about a banger today. But before we do, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good. Like, everyone in my house is sick, but making the best out of it.
Dude, you have had, like, it's not even, like, giving you shit. It's just, like, every week, like, you have something, like, some catastrophe happens. And I'm like... you have homeless people stabbing each other outside of your like windows. You have like giant car crashes. You have your dad going for donuts and nobody knows where he is. You have the sick children. And I'm like, that's why we go, what do we want to try to record? Let's try to do it earlier because something will burn down in Jerry's house. So we got to figure out if like we can move it a day or so. In which happened. Jerry's like, hey, can we move to tomorrow? Because everyone's vomiting in my house. I'm like, yeah, man. That's why we go. That's why I always pick earlier.
A few years ago, a friend of mine goes, "You know what you remind me of?" And I was like, "What?" And I thought it would be something really endearing. And he goes, "Job from the Bible." And I go, "Oh, the dude that everything fucking bad happens to him." He's like, "Yeah, yeah, it's wild." I've gone over it in my life with like, especially as an adult, and it's gotten better the last couple of years. But man, I had a streak there where it was just like, if something could go wrong, it did. And I was just like, fuck. And it's like, still not perfect because life isn't perfect. But you said, there you go. Well, okay, you have to grow this like really thick skin. You know, at first, like everything affects you and you're like depressed. But then after a while, you're like, this is fucking funny. Let's just laugh about it.
Yeah. This is just our state of being at this point, right? This is just how we live.
You know, this week, though, at least my dad isn't like... hitting on my wife without knowing that he's hitting on my wife like last week.
That story fucking made me laugh my balls off, by the way.
Oh,
I was going to say, I was talking about it beforehand. Your wife's book came out on Halloween, which was Sunday. We're recording on the 3rd, and it's called Days with Ghosts. It's a kid's book, and I just got my copy of it. So it got pretty up there on the Amazon charts there for like kids books, right?
Yeah, dude, it was like in the I don't remember what it was. I think like the 30s or 40s. The 30s,
I think it was the 30s. I think
we checked it and I was like, what the hell? Like, you're outselling The Crow today. And it was like such a weird little accomplishment. Like no, but like I'm so stoked. Like, it's something that she's wanted to do for so long, and the fact that she just kind of pulled the trigger and did it, like, it's awesome. And like the reception's been pretty cool. Like, some of her favorite authors, like gave her quotes for the books. They really enjoyed it. Like Jay Asher, the dude that wrote 13 Reasons Why. Like, it's such a trip, dude.
Wow.
Yeah, he asked us to like go out to eat with them if we're ever in San Luis Obispo. So we're like, okay,
dude. Man, it just shows you like what. I'm glad you encouraged her to do it because like I haven't like gotten to, like literally I was streaming, got off, ate some shit, and then like got back on with you and opened it like right before we started talking, and I'm like, it's fucking beautiful. The art is awesome, and it reminds me, dude. I grew up with those what were they called? Far Side comics back in the day, and like the art in this it's beautiful. It's simple though. It's black and white and with the ghosts and everything like that. And it's kind of got that vibe where it's like, it's got that like real, clean, cool thing. And which is awesome for something like a little kid's, man. And like, I think with kids books, they're like, one, kids have attention spans of nothing nowadays. Right. But two, it's like kids books are short. So like you need like a lot of kids books. Right. And so, I'm stoked, and especially, man, I don't think there's enough like scary like kids books because like you talk about it, handing out Stephen King books and you're a kid and getting in trouble for it, and I was the same kind of thing. I was reading Stephen King and R.L. Stein and Christopher Pike was kind of a little bit of a transition there. Who was like R.L. Stein. Original R.L. Stein, like when he was writing like the Fear Street kind of things. He was like a little bit. He had some books, man. I always remember one of his books where like a character feeds another character ground up glass, and it's just fucking metal shit, especially for that. And then it was Stephen King, and I tried reading Anne Rice a lot when I was a kid and never actually got through Anne Rice books because I think Anne Rice is very especially, or it's really good, but I think it's very.
I think it was a little too erotic for me at that age.
Yeah, I think that's it too. Like you don't get it. Like, dude, I remember going when I was a kid, reading, go to my library, and I would. I read these. They had a bunch of alien books, like about the Marines and shit like that. And whenever I found like a sex scene in one of them, and you're like 12 or 13, you're like, yeah, but you're like the rest of the book is like killing aliens and doing all the shit, So it's like whatever.
What's cool about her book is because she's such an avid horror fan. She slyly threw in like references here and there, and they seem innocent. Yeah. Like there's one page in the book where this ghost is reading to another ghost. It's like, let me tell you a story about an apple pillar. And it's a reference to Eric LaRocca's Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke, which is like this BDSM heavy horror book.
Oh man, that's that dude. You can slide that kind of reference in if you like, just because kids are never gonna get it. Like shit, that's like, Shrek. We talked about it before. Like Shrek made references about getting blowjobs, or the Robin Hood character does in that movie, and stuff like that. Stuff that like you can get past kids, as long as it's not too like overt. Like it's not like
no. There's that, and there's like quite a few references to Halloween in there. But like yeah, dude, I'm such a huge fan of it, and she's planning on doing a follow up next year, so I'm really stoked on that.
Yeah. Dude, I'm gonna check it out. I'm gonna actually read it here, and whenever I get a chance, I'm going to see Dead Mal 5 tomorrow night. So I don't know when I'm gonna get any time, but it's gonna probably wind down after we record and read it.
Totally, dude. I'm stoked for that, man. Yeah. That show, that's gonna be fun.
Dude, I don't even know all that much of his stuff, but like my friend was like, she's like, you gotta come with us because it's like he puts on such a show, and at Red Rocks, man, it's just like. Oh, Red Rocks is such a cool show, man. It's just unique having that, nature as that setting, especially with like it gets real dark and you just see stars and shit out, and it's really cool.
That's what I love about the Greek theater in LA. It's kind of like that open space kind of thing.
Yeah. Dude, it was when we saw Highland there, and it was like they had like, indigenous like people like chanting and warming up and doing stuff beforehand, and you're like, wow, this is cool. So I was gonna ask, what have you been watching? Do you watch anything cool for Halloween? I know you were watching The Wolf of Snow Hollow,
dude,
which we're going to talk about next week.
Yeah, that was one that I heard a lot of buzz about it late last year, but for some reason or another, I kind of forgot to watch it. And I bought it. I think I bought it like almost a year ago, and we were bored and we're like, we didn't know what to watch. So I picked like I pick about 5 or 6 movies, and we'll go through them, and I'll let my wife choose which one we watch, and she chose that. And fuck, man, that movie blew me away. I've never been as excited to talk about a movie as I am for that one, because like it's like such a good example, without going too much into detail, because we're going to talk about it next time. But it's an example of like when horror can kind of transcend what you think the genre can do, and like inspire people to like address alcoholism and anger issues and stuff. Like it was so cool.
Dude, this has been a kind of inspiring kind of like today, man. I don't know if you heard about John Moxley. He just checks himself into the in-person alcohol rehab. And I think that like him having a daughter, like probably woke him up to what he was doing to himself. And that dude is, if you're a wrestling fan, that man is extremely talented. And I'm glad that he's going out and getting himself some help. So
I love that, and I'm so in love with the idea of people showing support for that kind of stuff, because for the longest time, people, especially males, like they didn't talk about their issues, they didn't talk about their feelings, their struggles and stuff. And this new kind of culture of not only talking about that stuff, but embracing people who go to get help. Like, dude, that's so fucking cool,
Oh yeah. Dude, we go back and you look at the last 80 years of this country and look at what happened to soldiers specifically coming back from wars, and like how they weren't allowed to have that support structure in so much of the last 80 years, and how many suicides we had from World War II vets and or drinking themselves in the grave, or Vietnam vets, all these people who went and saw crazy shit. So it's so it's such a good thing to see, like, we're coming through and seeing for all the crazy shit that happens, like so much like support stuff that's happening these days makes me so happy. And that's one of them. Like I personally watching shit. I watched the Netflix movie. There's Someone in the House, or what is it called? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, there's someone inside your house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was kind of, it kind of reminded me of like the 90s slashers kind of thing. Like it kind of like urban legend and not Scream level quality, but that the movies that happened after Scream before they turned into PG-13.
The book is kind of like a YA kind of slasher thing. That author writes a lot of those. And dude, like that movie, it was directed by Patrick Brice, who made two of my favorite fucking found footage movies ever, Creep and Creep 2.
Dude, I love those movies.
Yeah, dude. Like he's doing these bigger movies, and like I hope that I hope they do well, because I really want him to come back for a third one. Because dude, I would kill to see a third Creep movie.
Those two movies, man, are just like, I feel like they're. I've talked to you about the stylist a little bit, but those movies are like they're so good at doing the same kind of thing where they make you feel like uncomfortable and not in just just like that creepy character kind of thing that isn't like hidden in the background, that's just front and center, and you're like,
well, like what's cool about that first one especially is you kind of don't know if he's a bad guy or not. It keeps you guessing, and you kind of just think he just really needs a friend. So when that final reveal at the end where he just like you see him walk up to the guy and you're like, oh, you know, nothing that bad's gonna happen, and he pulls out an axe and just chops his head. Dude, it's gnarly.
Dude, that movie, it's funny because I'm glad that movie's been getting more recognition the last couple of years, which is cool, because it's like I hadn't seen it until a couple of years ago. And dude, that fucking the whole like the werewolf mask that he wears in that movie that they use for like whatever scenes in it is like pretty fucking horrifying. That's the kind of werewolf I like. I really love the like tall lanky werewolves. Like like Dog Soldiers is one of my favorite werewolf movies of all time.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. So I was glad that There's Someone in Your House was as entertaining as it was. What else did my wife and I watch? We watched, what else did I? Oh, I watched Martyrs for the first time.
Oh, Lord.
Which I tweeted out because my stupid football team lost on Sunday. I was like, that was depressing, so I needed to watch something a little less depressing, and then I watched Martyrs. But, man, I feel like, okay, that movie's hardcore, don't get me wrong. It's fucked up. But I feel like that's another one of those movies that, like, non-horror people have watched that are like, oh my God, this is the most insane movie of all time. And it's not like it's not like lollipops and like unicorns, but that movie isn't like content wise, it's more heartbreaking than it is.
No, that's what it is to me.
It's so like, there's so much, we talk about, again, like we talked about it with Halloween Kills a lot, what like trauma does to someone. And that movie shows like a way longer scale of it. Also just shows what fucking evil capitalists will do when they have so much money and just want to keep themselves entertained.
That and like I think more than like even repulsing me or even scaring me, which I mean the movie didn't do. That movie just drains you. Yeah. Like I remember I watched it for the first time and I was like, I love this, but because of how empty and sad I feel watching it, I don't know if I'd never want to watch it or go out and buy it right now. Yeah.
Well, dude, it's not a happy movie. Again, it's a lot like a lot of things going on in our culture right now. Like fuck, look what Squid Games is. Squid Games is the same kind of thing. It's like I have a bunch of money and I'm bored, so I'm gonna get hundreds of people murdered, killed because they're desperate for money. You know, the funny thing about Squid Games is now there's all these fucking Squid Game things popping up, and that movie or the show is so anti-capitalist, and the people making money off of Squid Game is just the
my
most
daughter
insane thing.
Downloaded a Squid Game knockoff app on her phone.
Yeah,
to play the games, and it's like the whole. It's like the antithesis to what the show is about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's so insane, dude. Capitalism will make money off of anything, even things that are anti-capitalism.
Well, that and even Martyrs, like the rich people are so obsessed with what comes in between life and death that they do these horrific, horrible things to people just to see maybe, you know. And I love the end where she's like, she whispers basically what's right in the middle in the lady's ear, and then she just kills herself.
Yeah, she's like, I'm fucked. Okay, there's nothing to live for here. It's been so many, like, you know, instances of, like, you know, what the rich will do without money, with too much money. And I mean, we live in a world where billionaires are flying penises into space on a regular basis. But like, man, you look at things like Hunger Games and other more stuff like that. It's like when you have more money and then you're bored, you'll turn yourself into a cat person or whatever, you know, like it's just insanity of what. And let's be honest, man, we're not that far off in this shit now, man. We're at the point where we're just like, we have crazy people like supporting the rich people. Dude, I don't know if you saw it. There were motherfuckers and QAnon people in
I know exactly
Dallas
what you're
yesterday.
talking about.
Yeah, that were expecting John F. Kennedy, the person shot in 63, assassinated, and his son who died in an airplane crash in 99 to come back yesterday, and JFK Jr. was going to be vice president with Trump.
Dude,
I'm like,
that, and like the fact that any news outlet or anyone paid any attention to these motherfuckers speaks so much, like, it speaks volumes. Like, these are the motherfuckers that like talk to themselves behind Arby's. Why are we putting them on the news?
I don't, dude. That's what the problem is. It's I don't know if you've ever seen the show. There's a show that the My Name Is Earl people did called Raising Hope. I don't know if you ever saw it.
Yeah.
There's Cloris Leachman played Mama, and she goes at one point. She's like, they're entering a competition to like for inventions, and she's like, because she's like senile or she has dementia or whatever, and so like she doesn't realize all the things. But one of her ideas at one point is like a 24-hour news network, and she's like, no. But then they would have to sensationalize everything and like, you know, to do all this and this and this, and I'm like, oh, it hurts. It hurts so bad. It hurts so bad. But Martyrs is a watch, but man, I wouldn't suggest it if you're like real sensitive, because like that movie's notorious for like being hardcore, and I think that the violence against women stuff is really like that and the murdering of children is like a little like, it's a little like but like you and I have seen so much crazy shit that we're like not like desensitized to it, but like it's not as shocking to us, you know what I mean?
There was a American remake of Martyrs, and it is easily one of the worst pieces of shit I've ever seen, and they didn't get what Martyrs was, and there's like a semi-happy ending, and it's just like, dude, it feels like the WB version of Martyrs.
Oh man, so that one like I don't even know how much credit that, like how much, like, you know, like spotlight that movie got, because it was all those French extreme movies, and I still need to watch Inside. Inside's like the last one of those like that I, you know, said I need to watch at some point. And
did you watch Frontiers?
No, that's another one. I haven't seen that one either. But like I always went in with things like High Tension and shit like that. High Tension was a little bit later in that movement, but it's stuff like them and Martyrs, and man, French didn't fuck around for a while there, and they make some crazy fucking movies, man. They make some crazy fucking movies.
That, and like I love when a lot of the French extreme filmmakers like kind of come to America and try their hand. Like after High Tension, Alex Aja came and did Horns, Hills Have Eyes, Crawl, which is a lot of fun. The Inside guys did they did Leatherface, the one that came out in 2017. Like, it's cool, but at the same time, like the guys that did Inside did Leatherface, and like the studio second guessed everything, and like they don't realize, like, why do you have these people make these movies? These auteur French filmmakers have to do these movies if you're gonna like try to, you know, water them down.
It's like what like John Woo did. Like he made all these crazy gunplay movies in China, and then they're like they have him making Bulletproof Monk over here with like, and it's just like, well that and dude, Martyrs as like as a piece like that, the shit in that movie they wouldn't even let you release it like in that state in theaters over here, anyways. So like the beating of women and the fucking murdering children is just like. And yeah, it's but
it's
yeah, it doesn't make any sense. I don't know why they do it. It's like why I never watched the Old Boy remake, even though they got like Spike Lee to do it, who was a really good filmmaker. But like, I think
the longer time goes on, like the less I find myself wanting to revisit a lot of those movies, because at a certain point, you know, I get older, and as my kids get older, I start feeling like very like upset about like movies that have violence against children, a bunch of stuff. Like I love those movies still, like High Tension, Inside, Martyrs. I can't revisit them very often, but like, and this is cool because this actually has to do with the movie we're talking about tonight. I love watching like splatter films if you're like having a blast the entire time. Like it's one of my favorite things to do, like just gross out movies, but you find yourself like laughing the entire time, you know, as opposed to like Martyrs gets over and you're like calling your psychiatrist to see if you could get more Prozac and stuff, you know?
Yeah, you're like, fuck, well,
it's like The Mist. I love The Mist. Like, it's one of my favorite movies. But God, that ending just makes me feel like dog shit. I showed my wife The Sacrament. And dude, she will never watch that movie again because there's some movies just bum you out a little too much.
Yeah, dude, it's stuff like the movie about Jonestown that they made.
Sacrament.
The Sacrament. Yeah. It's just like, that's what I'm saying. It's like that movie is just like, you're like the Kool-Aid, and that's why the Midnight Mass scenes were like so like very much like that. And you're just like, but like dude, it's why they might not be my like, you know, top like, oh, this is my favorite. Alien, I think, is still my favorite horror movie of all time. But things like, I think I've watched stuff like Zombieland and Evil Dead and Reanimator and all this shit that's like comedy shit that is like, probably watched it more than Alien, even though I've watched Alien a lot. But like, just because that stuff is like that levity, like that lightning of it is, it's so important, and it's a perfect transition to Braindead, aka Dead Alive, because that it's just that it lets you like enjoy it without just being like grim, man. Like there's so many Hollywood movies that are really, really good movies. I'm just like, I'm never watching this again because it's dark and like, you know.
Oh, dude, like go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, all I was gonna say was like, this kind of stuff is like escapism, right? Like you're escaping from like what you want, like your everyday, you know, shit, your problems. You just want to think, you know, just enjoy yourself. And you can do that while watching, you know, having really dark shit like Martyrs. But like, but you don't, then you know at that point where you're like, do I want to go back into this?
Yeah,
you know?
No, and totally. Like when I was a kid, there were two kinds of horror films that you wanted to show your friends. One of them was, you know, the Martyrs kind of movies, you know, Faces of Death, Cannibal Holocaust. You want to show them to your friends to be like, check this out, you know, which is immature, but at the same time, you know, kids want to show like, hey, look at what I'm into.
Yeah.
And then movies like Dead Alive or Evil Dead 2 or movies like that. Yeah. That's a different kind where you want to show your friends because you know it's about to change their life. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like you see these movies and it's just like it becomes a movie that like you tell one kid about and the kid's excited to tell this kid about. Yeah. And dude, Dead Alive was like that for me. I watched that very early on as a kid. And dude, like it became an obsession. Like I was obsessed with telling everybody about Dead Alive and Nightbreed. Those were the two movies that I just wanted every kid to like.
Dude, that it took me so long because that movie is. I mean, it's talking about it. This is streaming on YouTube, is where I watched it. But man, there is that the lawnmower scene at the end of this movie is notorious. Like it's I think like one of, if not the bloodiest scene of all time by like gallons of blood being used on something. And it just, man, we talked about this like before, like Peter Jackson is a hell of a filmmaker. I got burned out on Lord of the Rings real fast because I went to Trilogy Tuesday and watched all 3 of those movies, 2 director's cuts, and I was like, this is enough. And then The Hobbit, man, you took a 300-page book and made it into 10 hours of movies because you're fucking greedy. And I want old school Peter Jackson back where he's doing like cool, crazy horror shit, you know?
Well, there's so many filmmakers that have that kind of trajectory in a bad way, in my opinion. Like I remember watching Memento when it first came out, and Insomnia and those movies, and I was like, oh my God, Christopher Nolan. You're like, wow. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then as each movie got a bigger budget, and now every Christopher Nolan movie is a huge spectacle in IMAX, and it has to be seen on film. And I've owned Tenet since it came out. I've never watched it though, because it's just like, you know what I mean? And Peter Jackson's the same.
Yeah. I bought my wife Tenet for Christmas last year, and we haven't watched it. Dude, it's so many filmmakers can't handle, like they can't handle budgets. It's weird, or either that, or it's like, you know, the bands that like, you know, have one good album and then like nothing else after that. And I think, dude, we talk about Dog Soldiers. That guy did Dog Soldiers into The Descent, and like, and then you go and watch Centurion, and you're just like, I mean, that movie was okay.
Yeah, Neil Marshall, like he's hit or miss too. Like I'll love something that he does, like Dog Soldiers or Descent, or even like Black Sails. I thought was a really good show that he kind of like developed and stuff. But like every once in a while, it's just like Centurion or even like the newest Hellboy. Like fuck, you know what I mean? I know the studio kind of basically took that out of his hands and fucked with it, but like It's like we've talked about it. It just, when film, we talked about it this episode. When you hire these people to do these things, let them do their fucking work, man. It's the same thing that happened with Zack Snyder and like the whole, like, you know, Snyder cut. And I mean, his daughter's death fucked with that even more. But like things like that. And like, it just like, you hear the guy who did Suicide Squad, the first one, what's his name? David Ayers. And what they did with his version of that film, and like you go, because you go watch Fury and tell me that motherfucker can't make a movie. Fucking Training Day, dude.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you just have these studios doing everything, and it just seems like with this Dead Alive is just like a movie that didn't spend all that much money, but like, man, they did so many cool things with this like little budget, and like, dude, the effects in this movie are some of the, like, I feel like this is one of the last movies I've seen that uses stop motion. Like, it's like that kind of time frame where they use this kind of stuff, and you go, damn, man, this is just a love of movies, right? It's like, this motherfucker loves movies. He loves Looney Tunes. You could tell watching this shit.
What's like this punk rock ethos to his early movies? You know, like Bad Taste, Braindead, Meet the Feebles. Like there was this kind of like punk rock aesthetic to early Peter Jackson, and like you said, the budgets, you know. And now, like, oh my god, dude, like King Kong or the Lord of the Rings movies. Like I'm not trying to get every, like, you know, Hobbit cosplayer pissed at me, but like I'm sorry, man, but the fucking extended cuts of all of those, I will never get that time back. Like I'm not dissing people that like fantasy stuff, but like, how did I try not to say a lot of these things because I don't want to sound like the kind of pretentious film fan that's like, oh no, early stuff's always better. Like I embrace movies that I like, but you can tell that like the kind of scrappy punk rock Peter Jackson kind of doesn't exist anymore. Yeah, you know what I mean?
It's the epitome of what Hollywood is, right? It's that big, like, that's in Lord of the Rings is less of it, but like The Hobbit is the perfect example. It's just hollow. It's bright lights, loud noises with no meat to it, and it's just like,
then there was no reason for all of that stuff to exist. I read The Hobbit once, and he spent like 3 pages on the texture of a tree. Like, how is that like 2 or 3 movies? You know what I mean?
Dude, it's just, I will never not laugh at that scene in Clerks 2 where the guy's like making fun of them, and he's like, here's Fellowship of the Ring. walk, walk, walk. Here's Two Towers, walk, walk, walk. Here's Return of the King, walk, drop the ring, and let's go home now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because you go, I mean, oh man, I really like those books. I read them as a kid. Those books were important to me, but like, man, it just doesn't translate nearly as well to the, like, that medium. And it's just like, especially in our ADHD culture, man, this movie, man, I told you, I was trying to watch it. Like, I was watching it and I was about to eat dinner. I started eating dinner at the, like, third act started. And I'm like, this is a bad idea, man. Like, because it's just, there's some gross shit in this movie. I mean, there is some positively gross shit in this movie. And it's fun. But because you could just tell he was just like, oh, if we did it like this, it'd be even grosser kind of shit. You know, like he's just
someone
there,
that like is someone that just like gets glee out of like grossing people out. And that's fun. And like what's crazy is like I feel like Peter Jackson could do a middle ground movie. You know, The Frighteners is very much in the middle of now, like Peter Jackson now and Peter Jackson before. And it works so well. Yeah. I mean, a couple like, you know, technology things here and there, but.
Yeah. Oh, dude, that movie also, that movie fucked up a lot of shit because he bought those computers to make that movie. Mm-hmm. And because of that is why he made Lord of the Rings, right? He's like, I got all these computers. What am I going to do with them now? And you go, oh, fuck. And so, like, I don't know, man. I sit there and go, like, The Frighteners was like my first Peter Jackson movie I ever saw in the theater. And I was like, this movie's fucking dope. And then you're like, well, I mean, that was like Michael J. Fox, like, so many things I appreciate as a kid. Michael J. Fox was one of those, I don't know, like, I might have been a weird kid, and I was a weird kid. Like, I loved fucking the New York City show he did where he was like the deputy mayor.
Spin City?
And Spin City. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I don't know if most kids, like, it was a very, like, aimed at adults kind of thing, but like.
Oh, dude, me too. I loved it.
Yeah, and you're just sitting there going, this is just Michael J. Fox being awesome. And you go back and like, I think the last thing I saw him on was like, he showed up on Curb Your Enthusiasm, like the season where Larry David was living in New York, and he was like fucking with Larry David with his disease, like, because he lived right above it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just like, man, I love that man. And it sucks so bad. That's like, I always have a hard time blaming karma because people like Michael J. Fox get fucked over in this world. So.
I was at the Scream Awards about 9 or 10 years ago, and it was when Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd came out on stage in the DeLorean. And dude, and then Bill Murray came out in his Ghostbusters outfit. Like, it was like one of the best days of my life. Like, and they would sit us in the crowd and move us every few other awards just to, like, you know, switch up the crowd. And the last time they set us right behind James Cameron. Oh, and so, like, my friend Brandon, like, in between awards, we kept, like, whispering stuff to James Cameron.
Dude, that's so good.
Yeah, it was cool.
Dude, that's so good. That's another guy who, I mean, still makes amazing movies, but man, money. I miss James Cameron not being, like, having billions of dollars to make every one of his films, right?
Well, like, dude, I mean, you know, whoever likes Avatar, you know, all power to you guys. You know, like, you do you. Like, I have nothing against Avatar. But if James Cameron thinks that people give a shit this many years later, like, dude, just move on.
Dude, man, I don't know.
I'm going to get so much hate for this.
I don't care, man. If it, like, you, dude, that movie, Avatar is a wonderful piece of technology, but the story was exactly the same.
It's fucking Ferngully.
It's Ferngully. It's the Pocahontas. It's the Last of the Mohicans. It's the Last Samurai. Not Last of the Mohicans. The Last Samurai. It's just everything where technology is bad. Yeah, where technology is bad and nature is good, and which is fine, but it's just like, it's not something super original. And like, I don't know. I hope the new ones are good. That whole thing is weird. Also, like, they're building theme parks and doing all this shit, and it's like, you guys waited so fucking long to do all this stuff. I'm just like, really?
Well, it's like the second Independence Day. Like, of course it bombed. You know, like, who gives a fuck this late in the game?
you didn't even get Will Smith back, man. That's when you
killed off his character in between movies. Like, what the fuck, dude?
Such a stupid thing, man. Man, the other director when you think about like this in the same kind of Sam Raimi thing, or Peter Jackson was Sam Raimi, as I say Sam Raimi first. Sam Raimi feels like kind of like Peter Jackson, but like hasn't been as successful because I think a lot of that you go back and look at Spider-Man 3 fucked a lot of shit up. But
yeah, but like the thing about Sam Raimi is even with the big budgets, you could tell he's still trying to be Sam Raimi. Like I wasn't the biggest fan of his like Wizard of Oz movie, but there were so many fun references to like Evil Dead and playful shit in that movie that it just still feels like a Sam Raimi movie.
I never saw either one of those. Like they made 2 of them, didn't they?
I only watched one. I don't know if they made a second one, but like that
was that the one with
that was the one with James Franco.
Yeah,
and then when Sam Raimi came back and did Drag Me to Hell, like you know what I mean? That was Sam Raimi post Spider-Man. That was Sam Raimi after he was A-list Sam Raimi doing basically Evil Dead again. It was fucking rad.
Dude, that movie is one of the most hardcore PG-13 horror movies of all time. Like the shit they got away with it in that movie.
The end,
like,
man.
Yeah. Oh, dude, the end, the fucking seance scene is fucking gnarly. And yeah, it's the my wife hates endings. That's why she like if a movie like kicks you in the balls in the end, like she hates Drag Me to Hell because of that. And the same reason she like hates The Mist, right?
My wife was like that. We went and saw The Prodigy because I'm like a huge fan of Nicholas McCarthy, the filmmaker.
Yeah.
We saw it and she was so into that movie until the end. And immediately she was like, fuck this movie. I'll never watch it again. Like I bought it I bought it on like Black Friday that year. And she just like shook her head the whole time.
Dude. So let's go in and talk about this movie more specifically. So it came out in 92, directed by Peter Jackson, like I said. Its premises is, the synopsis is, a young man's mother is bitten by a Sumatran? I don't fucking... Sumatran, it says. Sumatran rat monkey. She gets sick and dies, at which time she comes back to life, killing and eating dogs, nurses, friends, and neighbors. I was saying to you while I was watching this, by the way, the priest character needed more time in this movie, and one of my favorite fucking characters ever. But man, this movie starts off, and I wonder, like watching it, could this movie get made today? And not just like the fact with all the gore, but like, man, the shit they do like with the native stuff at the very beginning is very much like like a more comedy version of what he did with King Kong later on.
Well, it's like, connected. I mean, Skull Island, where the rat is from King Kong. And what's cool in his King Kong movie, he had the rats from this movie in it.
Yeah, so they were like in the cargo hold or something, right? Yeah.
So it's kind of funny that it's like this Dead Alive is connected to fucking King Kong.
Yeah.
but it's like this New Zealand fucking like splatter movie about like a dude that just can't let go of his mom, this toxic woman, which dude, to be honest, my mom was like that. She was just an despicable person, to be honest. And like, that shadow of her always was on my shoulders. And like, I think that's one of the reasons that even as a kid, I loved this movie because I'm like, dude, this is my mom, It's so much fun.
It's that thing where, man, you talk about it now, and I know enough people like, someone who has shitty parents, and you like talk to them about it. And like, I think I have friends who go, I know that my fucking mom or dad sucks. But there's that fucking primal part of you that like needs their approval, right? That needs their love, needs all this stuff. And you go, and so it's like, you go, why is this guy put up with this shit? And you go, well, because you learn later. I mean, you learn pretty early on. His dad died young. And so it was just him and his mom. And so this kid had to do all this shit. And you go, man. And this mother is evil, and her fucking brother is almost as bad, if not worse than her. He's like a Texan, but from New Zealand. Yeah. Well, he's an enabler, and he's a leech. He's like someone who gets through life by doing as little as possible and like just getting as much free shit as you can.
Yeah, and like the main character Lionel, like he means well so much.
Yeah.
And, like even when he meets the girl that he likes, Paquita, and like you know what I mean? Like a good life, a fresh start is in front of him the entire movie, and he fucks it up almost the entire time because of like this fucking like duty that he feels he has to this crazy mom.
Well, he has that duty for the mom, and then there's the like I think he's kind of like he's got that like protector thing going about him, right? He's like because these zombies pop like they don't ever call him anything, right? But they start popping up later on, and he takes it upon himself to like try to get rid of them. Like he's trying to be the one to do it, and I don't know if it's because to protect his mother or whatnot, but you go, man, this guy put up with a lot of shit. But yeah, so this movie starts off, and they have some New Zealand guys are on this island collecting this rat thing, and the natives are chasing them down. And I always go, man, it's fucked up, but like this guy is like, the natives are like, no, you can't have it, and he like starts like shooting a Tommy gun at him or some shit, like so. And I watched some YouTube video guy talking about it, and he was drunk when he made this video, and like he was like, oh, my drunken review of this movie. And he was like, oh, then he kills all these people. But he doesn't kill any of the natives, I don't think. I don't even think he actually shoots them. He kind of just goes into the air with it. But it's you find out real early how fucked up this rat monkey thing is, because like the natives that are there with him, like helping guide him, they are his people. I don't even like, they're his people, right? They know how fucked up it is, because he gets bitten on the arm, and they're just like, they're chopping his arm off, and then they chop his leg off, and then they find the scratch marks on his head, and then they cut his head off. And you're just like, dude, this is like pretty gnarly. Like there are a lot of limb removals in this movie.
It's
right?
gnarly, but it feels like a splatter punk version of the Three Stooges a lot.
Yeah.
Like Three Stooges are, like you said, Looney Tunes. Like that's what this movie is. It's like Looney Tunes in live action with tons of blood.
Well, dude, it's funny because this came out in 92, and you go, this is like, we're like what, 3 or 4 years into The Simpsons with like Itchy and Scratchy, right? And Itchy and Scratchy being that cartoon thing with like so pure of violence in it, and you go, man, this is about as close as you get to something like Itchy and Scratchy or something like that, right? It's like, man, and the baby scenes we'll go back to, but like, man, I love it. So this thing gets pulled back to New Zealand. They get away with it. And no, we go back to the New Zealand, which, man, it's funny watching this movie, because then you see so many of the same shots in this movie, in The Frighteners, and like all the early stuff that he actually shot in New Zealand, right? Like he was trying to make New Zealand look like California in The Frighteners, but it's like you see the same hills and kind of shit that are in that movie, you know? Yeah, man.
He's like David Cronenberg in the sense that like David Cronenberg refuses to shoot anything outside of Canada. Like he just will not go to America. And so like all of his movies, even if they don't take place in Canada, like Phil, like you watch The Fly and you're like, that's Canada.
You bring up Cronenberg, and I wanted to say something, I kept forgetting to. I finally watched Videodrome recently, and I'm going, man, the thing it's a really good movie, but man, I go, Videodrome and Scanners are almost exactly the same movie. I'm like watching this, I'm like, I just watched Scanners recently. This is like the same fucking movie, like conspiracy nuts and body horror and all this shit, and they get in some more crazy shit in Videodrome, but like, I'm like, come on, David.
I think that he kind of rotates in a lot of like similar themes, because there's like Shivers and Rabid and so many other movies that are like that, or like Dead Ringers, but like Dead Ringers, or even like Crash, which is like, these people that are obsessed with car crashes and get turned on by car crashes. Like the way that David Cronenberg's head works, I don't understand, but I fucking love it so much.
Yeah.
Dude, and he was like the cool. Yeah, dude. Yeah, I loved Possessor. That and like David Cronenberg as the main villain in Nightbreed.
And
dude, Decker's one of my favorite villains.
That and he that mask is so cool.
Yeah.
But that and he does the him and Jason X.
Mm-hmm.
He's in it for like that man is fucking he loves cinema, and it's like he's very similar to like I think he kind of feels like Quentin Tarantino, like but in horror kind of things like. But yeah, we talked about Possessor on the show, and that movie fucking blew me away in so many ways. His son did. It's kind of like Stephen King and Joe Hill, right? Like Joe Hill does what his dad does, but he does it so well. Yeah, so we go back to New Zealand, and this all takes place in 1956. And you meet our shop girl, who is, you talked about her, Paquita, and a very like, I don't know how to say this, like I don't know how to say this without being like going down ways that we do. Her family seems very like what you would call gypsies, but I know gypsy is a bad word nowadays and like a slur. So I don't know what to say. Like they're very like
kind of nomadic kind of thing.
Yeah,
like
nomadic
nomads,
kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like yeah, but like they have those kind of vibes of what those type of people you would think of. Like her grandmother is like a fortune teller or something like that, right? And it's got that kind of thing. But they own this little store, and they basically tell her she's gonna fall in love with tarot cards, right? And this girl, man, she is her Deanna Penalver. She's a pretty lady, and is probably way too pretty for Lionel, but the guy comes in, the delivery dude, who is like, she's like trying to like pop her tits out for him, and he's like covering her up and stuff. You're like, especially because it's so weird because later on they like she's with him for like a hot minute because fucking Lionel's like going through shit. But she comes in, and then Lionel comes in, and they meet, and she's like, oh, I'm supposed to fall in love, and this guy is like, oh, he's the one. And you're sitting here, and this guy is such a dweeb, but it's like in the 50s, right? So it's like, and you're in New Zealand, so you're like, how many things are different then? And it's funny, but you go in, and you basically, these two get set up, and she like, Lionel orders groceries for his mother, and Paquita delivers them. You know, every time I watch this movie, I start thinking they said her name's Nikita, like because the accents of all her family and her is very, very heavy, and I kept thinking they were saying Nikita, but like they're also with the New Zealand accents also, but and they end up actually basically going to the zoo, and the fucking crazy mother. Man, I fucking hate the mother.
I love that part.
She's that overbearing character that we talked about. Like we go back to like The Mist and the crazy religious lady in that, or things like that kind of. I mean, what you think of when you think of like what the mother in Psycho was like while she was still alive, right? Like you just kind of assumed she was that kind of like controlling bitch that like this woman gets over.
The mom to like where like if you need to go somewhere or you're gonna go do something with your friends and your mom's completely fine, like right before you go, she'll be like, "Oh, my chest," and you're like, "Shit, guys, I can't go." You know, like that kind of person.
Yeah, the one that like or is like, oh, you can't do that because I need you. And she does that I need you kind of thing. It's very like like that. You see why her brother, when you meet her brother later on, why he's the way he is also. But these two are going to the zoo, and they're just having a good old time. And they find this rat that they found in the beginning of the movie, and it's clay animation, but it's fucking wonderful because it just kills this fucking monkey that lives in a cage next to him because he pisses him off or something like that. And you're like, oh man. And then these two wander off away from it, and then you hear like screaming, and it's his mother, and she had gone over by this rat, and it bites her. And you go, oh fuck, because you don't really know what happened, but like you saw what happened to the guy leading the expedition that captured it, where they were chopping his limbs off because he got bit by this. And then you're getting to this whole like escalation of what happens with her, and then like what happens and how it spreads after this point. And dude, you start getting some fucking gnarly, gross shit really early after this, like really quickly after this, right? She's joining what is it, like the women's league of something like a WL or something like that. She's like their new treasurers, so they're coming for dinner or lunch on one of these days, and the mother wakes up and her face is just like it's like cabin fever, cabin fever almost, right?
Which is kind of like drooping.
Yeah, well, she's got a big triangle of her skin just falls off, and then he glues her. He's like, "Oh, I'll tell him to come back," and she's like, "No," and she has him glue her face back together. And you're like, "What the fuck?" And this is like she's sitting there and they're eating steak with this couple, and this husband and wife who run this club. And dude, this is where it starts being like, it's kind of like you just see Peter Jackson just like grossing
pieces of
out,
her
like
falling off.
Yeah, well, that pieces are falling off, and they bring out custard, and she's got like blood squirts into her fucking custard, and she's eating it, and the other lady sees it,
and it's not like, even subtle. It's like close up, like god.
And then her fucking ear falls off into her custard, and she eats her own ear. And one of my favorite parts of this whole scene, at the very end of it, you see her just like slowly spitting her earring out of her mouth, like she's like it was on her ear that she just ate. You go, what the fuck?
It feels like a slapstick comedy show. Like it would be like Three's Company with like, like NC-17 or X-rated gore. Like it's humorous, like kind of like situational comedies, you know, like people are stuck in these like especially the scene you were just talking about. You're kind of stuck in this room with these people, and you see like the grossest shit go down, and you can't look away because he doesn't allow you to. And that's what I love about this movie. So many other movies, especially movies that were made in America around that time, would cut to something else instead of show you all this stuff up front. But the humor kind of comes out of those really disgusting moments. Like the movie's like it's a splatter horror film, but this movie is so fucking funny like the whole entire time.
Yeah, it's because, man, and it goes like she keeps getting worse, and then like at some point in the near future, the Paquita comes over with her German Shepherd, which is a key statement here. Mm-hmm. And the mom is real fucked up, and they're about to like call like the nurse to like take her to the hospital. And the mom eats her German Shepherd, and you're like, they come up and like they hear the dog whimpering or whatever, and all like he pulls like its tail out of her mouth, and it is so disgusting because it's like gooey and like you're like. You ever eat a hair on accident? You're like,
you ever eat a German Shepherd on accident?
Yeah, on accident. Dude, that's not a small fucking dog. Let me tell you what.
It's like Michael Myers level, man. Who eats dogs?
Dude, yeah, exactly. Oh, man, what is he? He's like the Michael Myers in the second Rob Zombie movie where he's just eating dog hearts like they're like, like candy bars.
He ate the dog in Halloween 4. He ate the dog in the first Halloween. Like this fucker just likes eating dogs. It's fucking weird.
Yeah, he loves it, man. And this is like they're like ready to get he calls the fucking paramedics, and Paquita goes to like pack her up some clothes for the hospital, and the nurse is there, and the mother dies. And this is where it starts getting real fucking bonkers. This is like a slapstick you're talking about, like with Looney Tunes, even more shit. Like the mother comes back to life after dying. It like she sticks her fingers in the nurse's like cheeks or something like that, and then like opens her up like a Pez dispenser. Like she like pulls her head backwards, which is the fucking reoccurring gag for the rest of the movie because they just are using that the rest of the time. And then fucking Lionel shoves them both in the basement, and she like Paquita comes back down with the clothes, and she's like, "Where'd they go?" And he's like, "They're at the hospital." Like they're like, "Oh, okay. I didn't hear the ambulance. Yeah, they went in her car because mom." You're like, oh man, because you don't know why he's doing this. You don't know why he's like, it's to protect his mom or what. But like, I feel like if he would have been honest with her, like right at this point, maybe things would have gone better.
Well, he's like that. He's like that kind of person that like they see a good thing in front of them, but they feel like if the person that they like knows the whole situation about them, they wouldn't be as appealing. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like when my wife and I first met, like I was just coming off of like a gnarly like pill addiction. And like, you know, and I'm not to get serious for a second, but like, you know, I was also like cutting myself at the time, self-harming. This is like 5-6 years ago. And like, I would always wear like a hoodie 24/7, like when my wife and I first started dating, because I didn't want her to see all these things, because once you see like the cracks in people, you know, then the flaws come out, you know, and like Lionel's very much like that, and obviously a less serious side, you know, it's comical, but like he likes Paquita. He's just afraid that once she sees how devoted, even though he doesn't want to be, to his mom, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, they have so like specifically when they're leaving the zoo scene, and he's like looking back at her because like the mother, after getting bit by this rat thing, monkey, is like, she's like, I want to go home now. And you see him like he goes home with her and he looks back at her and he's like, I'm sorry, like I have to take care of my mom. Like it's like that burden he has to wear.
Yeah.
Like he has to bear it. Like that's his mother. He loves his mother, even though she's a evil old wench, man. And like this is where one of the other funnier characters in the movie, he goes off and he finds like this mortician who they do a real good job not of hiding, but he's a Nazi who's obviously escaped Germany and still running around in his like fucking Nazi uniform, because like there's a big tear in his like doctor lab coat where you need to just see the Nazi symbol, the swastika underneath it, and he starts getting he thinks it's not a stimulant, it's what do you call it, fucking to knock his mother out, like I'm saying depressant, but I can't think
sedative?
of the word I'm trying to think of. Sedative, yeah.
Tranquilizer.
Yeah, tranquilizer. And he starts injecting the nurse and his mom with the shit just to keep him from, you know, going around. And you later figure out it's not really a tranquilizer. It's a stimulant of some kind. And it makes everything way bigger once you put a bunch of it in. And dude, that shit, he loves the needle scenes in this movie because he's doing shit where he's like injecting it in eyes and up noses and shit. You're like shit that's like, it's eye stuff, man, fucks with me a little bit.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
The first time I ever watched Audition, where I thought she was putting needles in his like eye at the very end, but it's like right in the corner.
Yeah.
And you just go, oh man. And how does she ends up eventually like getting out, and like he ends up like they end up saying she's dead. Like I don't even remember how they actually get her out. She breaks out of the basement, right? That's what happens. And so this is where the shit show really hits the fan, because they take her to the church to like, which is weird because it seems like they have the church connected to the mortuary.
Yeah.
Just because it's a small fucking town, right? And this is where Peter Jackson makes one of his cameos, right? But they stick her in there. They're like embalming her, and they're like, no one's in the room, and like she's just covered in like, she's like fit like a water balloon, with this embalming fluid. It is so gross, and you're like, ah. And then my favorite part of that scene though is like when the funeral home director comes back in, and he's like, he just pushes her eyeballs back into her head, and you're like, bleh, bleh.
I feel like Peter Jackson was just like just a giddy schoolboy trying to think of ways to just like gross someone out. Like I feel like his goal was to make every person that watched this in the theater puke. Dude,
I've watched a lot of fucked up shit in this movie in my 38 years, and this movie's still like, it's like not easy to watch all this shit, even like from someone. It's not. It doesn't fuck around, man. It does not fuck around, and even though it's comical, but it's still got that gross out factor. And basically at this point, the mother like tackles Lionel goes looking to make sure she's like not like wandering around. and she like tackles him through a wall, and they end up like, oh, I guess what are they like? She's moving. I don't even know. They're like, they don't seem to make it like that big of a deal, even though she looks like a fucking nightmare, right? And this is where you go back to they bury her in the graveyard, and there's these fucking like grease heads, or I don't like what greasers, is that what they're called, right?
Little rockabilly greasers. Dudes,
yeah, who are like running around just like pissing on gravestones and shit like that. They're like, they start fucking with Lionel when he's going to make sure his mother isn't like, you know, like coming up or whatever. And this has some shit in it, like where she like grabs his dick, and like someone described it as she fucks the like rockabilly guys to death, basically. And this is where the priest shows up, and I fucking love him. He's a priest that does kung fu. He'd been in the funeral, but like he wasn't very like, didn't have much of a part into this.
It's so fucking random. It's my favorite part of the whole movie, dude.
Yeah, he goes, I kick ass for the Lord. It's just like, I love it so much. I said, that's what I said. Like, this motherfucker needs like a spinoff. Like, I want like a kung fu priest, like how he learns kung fu, like his like early years, like movie, like him going and traveling around.
It reminds me of the pancake kid from the first Cabin Fever. You know, that kid with the long mullet and just goes pancakes and just starts like doing like kung fu kicks.
Dude, I just saw a thing about that scene. That scene was completely improvised. And I go, why?
Give that kid a movie.
That mullet is impressive, man. I just thought, you ever see, like when I was in California, I saw like the last day we were there, like I turned on the morning news and they were talking about the national like mullet, some national mullet contest. I'm like, why?
Isn't that the perfect place to just bomb? Like, just put a bomb somewhere and then like the world's troubles go away.
I wish, man. Jesus.
I was watching the Every Time I Die kind of like fake telethon they did last year, and their guitar player like has like what they call a skullet. You know, he's kind of balding, but he has like the long hair.
Yeah.
I was just obsessed with that one.
Dude, I always laughed. There's a WWE wrestler, Baron Corbin, and I kept going, that motherfucker's hairline was so bad. I'm like, dude, just shave your head. Just shave your fucking head. You look so bad like that. And he finally did. And,
dude, that dude was supposed to come on the show I used to host. He's a huge horror fan. Yeah, like scheduling didn't work out last minute, but he was so into the idea. Yeah.
Dude, he seems like a cool dude. They always have him playing a giant douchebag on the thing, but you see him like outside of it. But yeah. And so basically these rockabilly guys all get eaten by the mother. And the priest gets like knocked into the air and like impaled on a statue. And you just go, oh man. And for some reason there's like more rockabillys than there are, but like the Lionel brings like the priest and the head rockabilly back to his house, and I don't know why just those two, but he does, and it sets up for some of the funny shit in this movie because like then you start getting scenes where like he's trying to feed them all like tranquilizers, and he's like the nurse's head is like falling off like a Pez dispenser. Like I said, they do all this shit, and then like. I think this is when the uncle shows up, right? His uncle shows up. But then the best part of this, and I don't know if I caught this the first time, you hear the zombies fucking. It's the priest and the nurse are fucking as like the you go, what the fuck is going on? And it's so good. But yeah, you meet the fucking uncle who basically wants money from his sister dying. And later on he comes back and he kind of figures out there's bodies in the basement and he uses it to like blackmail Lionel. But this, after he tries to feed him all this shit and the uncle leaves, he catches the nurse and the priest fucking, and he does more things that are kind of like Looney Tunes, like where the priest the nurse like is biting the priest's lips and like pulls his lips off, and it's just like
stretches out
his mouth. Yeah, it's like very Looney Tunes. And then he puts them all in the basement, And I don't know how much longer after this, but like Lionel goes back into the basement, and this is where you meet the baby. The fucking you see an inkling of it when they like he puts him back in the basement. Like her belly grows like a little bit, like you could see it, like it was supposed to be noticeable. And she had a baby, and this thing is the fucking best part of this entire movie, and that's saying a lot because there's a lot of good shit in this movie. And because this baby, it looks, I don't even know how do you describe what this baby looks like, man? I don't even know what the best way to describe it. Yeah. It's like dead, but like it's got like, I don't know, man. It kind of reminds me of like that animatronic world of stuff like dinosaurs and shit like that. Even though it's like a human baby.
Well, like you could tell that Peter Jackson was super obsessed with stop motion stuff and even puppetry and stuff. Like, have you seen Meet the Feebles?
No,
dude,
I haven't seen that or the first one he did.
Bad Taste.
Yeah, Bad Taste.
Dude, Meet the Feebles. It's basically kind of like the Muppets if it was fucking like X-rated horror, fucking raunchy shit. It is the most offensive kind of movie like that. And like you could tell with the baby in this and like the rat and so many different things that like I love Peter Jackson when he used to fuck around with like outdated technology. Yeah. You know, puppets, stop motion stuff. Now like everything has to be like CGI, and you know, I don't care if movies have CGI, but when the whole fucking movie feels like CGI, you know what I mean? Like it's just like there's no imagination. You know what I mean? Like I love the kind of elbow grease aesthetic in this movie and like all of his early stuff.
Dude, he even does the. I'm pretty sure they do the Chucky thing where they have a little person dressed up in the baby costume where it's like running away from the screen and stuff. But man, I don't know. My favorite scene in this whole movie, probably, and the one where I laughed my ass off. For some reason, Lionel, I don't know why, but he decides he's going to take this baby to the park. Like you sitting there and going, why would you do this, man? Why?
Well, it's like Foolish Decisions, the movie.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. And you're like, but it's so funny because you see him like trying to like observe the other mothers in the park, and like, but then you start seeing, you're like, but how is he taking care of this thing? And you realize he's put barbed wire in between the baby and himself. Mm-hmm. And you go, what? And you're like, okay. And he's like doing all the things that like he's got like a stuffed animal for it, just like the all the other babies do. And dude, when it rolls down the hill and he starts having like the fight with the baby, I laugh every single time because like you see these like people in the park are watching him and he's like slamming the baby against the swing poles and shit like that. And you're like, what? And it's so over the top. But also like, you could tell like the guy, Timothy Balm played Lionel, and the dude, you just see him like hitting you can tell now in these higher definition versions of the movie, he's just like slamming a baby doll into the thing. And the guy just sold it so well, and it's so fucking funny, and the scene is just like, it's chef's kiss.
Did you ever see Feast 2?
No, I saw Feast 1.
Dude,
because
there's a scene where all the monsters are chasing everyone in the middle of the street, and this dude's running with the baby, and he's running, trying to get his family out of the way, and the monsters are getting closer, and the guy looks back and just throws his baby up and just keeps running, and the monsters just eat the shit out of his baby.
You know why I wanted to see I saw the first Feast was because the stuff with like the Green Room Project or whatever, but because
Project Greenlight. I love that
Project one. But it's because Jay from Jay and Silent Bob was in that movie, and it was one of the reasons why I watched that movie. I think I have that on DVD somewhere, the first one. Mm-hmm. That movie also, the whole thing it does where it's like, here's our main hero, and then he dies like 2 seconds after that is fucking hysterical. Yeah. That movie's fun. So after the scene with the baby at the fucking park, he goes home, and this is when the uncle has found like the bodies in the basement. I don't know how they don't eat him. Oh, because he's got them all tied up right in the basement. And he's basically like, if you don't give me the house, I'm going to call the cops. And the guy's like, okay, you could have it. And this motherfucker decides to have this party like right away. And this is where like the party is like the third act of this movie and is probably one of the most bonkers third acts I've ever seen in a film.
Yeah.
Like it is so off the wall. The whole like fucking thing is insane. Like
it's basically
like hard.
The whole third act is basically that whole like section of Evil Dead 2 in the house where everything's coming alive and everything, blood's coming out of the walls and all that shit.
Yeah.
That's basically the whole third act of this movie.
But with a way bigger house and way more people.
Oh,
like,
totally.
It's like so. There's got to be like like not 100, but like it's like 30, 40, 50 people in this scene who most of them besides Lionel and all of them besides him and Lionel and Paquita become zombies. And man, this whole fucking end scene, like, so like the most notorious scene for this movie is this like third act is when he straps the lawnmower to his chest. And every time I see that scene, I go, man, I can't get a lawnmower that doesn't get stuck on like wet grass, too much wet grass being in it. And like, how does this motherfucker have a lawnmower that's just going through human beings?
He probably got it the same place that Jeff Kober got that ceiling fan from First Power. Dude,
and that's why I wanted to watch this movie. That ceiling fan scene reminded me so much of this fucking movie. And man, but there are so many, like, it's just hard. Like, the plot wise, you figure out that at this point that like his mother actually killed his father, and his father was cheating on her, drowned them both, and like put their bodies up in like a fucking like a thing upstairs in the attic. And dude, my wife was watching this part the other day with me, and she goes, "What the fuck?" Because like there are like intestines come back to life, and are like all the internal organs of like one of these people was like still in this trunk, and it's just like he's choking on like small intestines and shit like that. And you're just like, this fucking movie is bonkers, man. Yeah. So basically they have this party and basically all the zombies get out and it's just pure chaos. It is, dude. I also, the practical effects in this part are so fucking good. Like the head on the floor sliding around for like most of this third act is fucking, it is perfect. Like, I don't know how they did it. I don't know how because they like, it's a guy sticking his head through it's gotta be a guy sticking his head through the floor, but like they have it sliding around that it looks like it's really that. And it's bonkers, man.
It's just like it's a splatter film in like the exact definition. Like when you mention splatter movies, this is the kind of movie that pops into people's heads. You know, like anytime I hear the words like a splatter film or something like that, the first thing that I ever think about is the entire ending of this movie. Like when Lionel gets that lawnmower and he's just mowing down people, you get gallons after gallons, like pools of blood everywhere. And it's like the goriest thing ever.
Dude, that and then fucking Paquita is like shoving things in food processors in the kitchen, including the baby, which is more fucking hysterical shit with the baby and like blopping, like going up into the air and just like it's so. Dude, every scene the baby's in this movie fucking makes me laugh. And the dude, when the fucking uncle gets it, you're like, yes, fuck this piece of shit, because he's just a giant douchebag. And all this leads up to like the fucking mother pops up and she is like super sane zombie. She's like this giant practical effect. And somehow she comes up through the roof. Like she's so fucking big. She's like the roof of the house.
She's like the Beetlejuice worms.
Yeah, basically. She's stop motion, right? And and there's practical effects on top of it, because like he ends up getting eaten by her with her like vagina stomach, but he fucking cuts her open with this with the pendant from the Paquita's family, and you go, man, and that's where, dude, that's another like, I think this movie set records for how many gallons of blood they used, like fake blood they used, and that scene where the he cuts her open. There's so much blood coming out, like so much. It's like actually comparable to him like lawn mowing everyone in the down on the first floor of this house. And it's all the stuff like stop motion. It's just, it doesn't look, it's not perfect looking, but man, it just holds up. Like it looks way better than CGI, like early CGI, especially. Like you compare it to like, dude, The Frighteners is a wonderful movie, but like, dude, some of those CG scenes, you're like, it's not, it doesn't ruin the movie, but
well, that's the thing. Like I CG as close to real as they try to make it be, I feel like that gets dated more than practical effects. Yeah. You know everything in this movie's fake, that Dead Alive. You know it's fake. But the practicality of it, the physical, like the tangible, like it's tangible. You could touch it. You know what I mean? It's lasting. And like I love seeing that kind of stuff because it goes back to what I was saying about like this kind of punk rock ethos. It's like DIY punk as fuck splatter movie. Like you could feel the things rip.
It's why, man, I go back and forth, but I think when it comes like a large portion of my life, I actually prefer The Thing over Halloween. And I know that's like might be a blasphemy for a lot of people.
A lot
of
people do.
The practical effects in that movie are just, they're so perfect. And it's like that core of what John Carpenter was doing, and just that fucking whole scene. And between that and I always think of that movie and The Fly. And I know I got yelled at for not thinking of American Werewolf in London, but man, the practical effects of all that stuff. Yeah, dude, I recently I did a episode with Brian from Dead in Santa Carla, and we talked about The Howling. I said it then, the transformation effects in The Howling might not be as good, but they're still awesome. And that movie is a million times more like fucking horrifying than American Werewolf.
I've always preferred The Howling. Like I get a lot of shit about that too. Like my favorite werewolf movie is Ginger Snaps, and I get like so much shit. Like dude. I can't mention that movie without people like someone chiming in going, "Well, what about American Werewolf?" It's like I like it, but you know what I mean? Like I was always more of a fan of like The Howling.
Dude, I always say, and that's what I talked about on that episode, but like the transformation scene in The Howling with the lady in the room is 10 times more horrifying than anything in American Werewolf in London, because all that stuff is so isolated. And it's like the transformation is cool, but man, like the Howling has that fucking intense, like you're up in your face, like you talk about it, you said it, punk rock kind of like thing, because you're sitting there and you're like, oh, this is in your face and you have to deal with this. And
and Joe Dante didn't kill someone, so it's the better movie. Yeah.
Oh, well, dude, it's very, very, very true. That helicopter scene, oh man, man. But like, just pure practical effects, man, and it's just what this movie is. And I think this movie kind of ties like Peter Jackson and Sam Raimi like in that same mold, like because this is his like Evil Dead 2 kind of thing. This is like that kind of like, I mean, it amps it up a lot, and he had a little more money than like I think Sam Raimi did for Evil Dead 2, but Evil Dead 2 didn't have a lot of money either. This movie is like, it's funny, it's gross, it's got everything you want in this just kind of like this package that you go, man, I wish Peter Jackson would just go back and like be restrain himself a little bit, man.
The problem is, and like, dude, I find myself saying the same thing. Like, oh, God, I wish he would go back to that. But like Christopher Nolan, I don't know if Christopher Nolan can make another Memento. You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't know if Peter Jackson can make another like Dead Alive, as much as, dude, I fucking wish he would. But I feel like all these filmmakers, like, I don't think Sam Raimi can make an Evil Dead. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like they've kind of transitioned so far into what they are now. Well, it's kind of like Tim Burton. You know, like, I used to love Tim Burton stuff so much, but nowadays it's hard for me to enjoy a lot of his recent movies because he feels like a caricature of, he feels like what everyone thought Tim Burton was then, he is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's an exaggeration of what he is.
dude, he did that, and he made Johnny Depp feel like a bigger joke, and like so much with him, and like he did so much cool stuff. But man, I don't like. I say like I like Sweeney Todd, but like if you told me you didn't like Sweeney Todd, I would agree. Like I don't know what you could go back and point to like Tim Burton's last great
Big Fish
was like, yeah, and man, it's just like, man, I think you know what's funny though, man, like. Look at I feel like Guillermo del Toro might be the exception to all that because that motherfucker has been doing things his own way forever.
Oh, dude, and I don't think definitely
he doesn't get enough credit for it. Like, man, like he does. I might it might be blasphemy. I think the Lady Flux of Fishman is an overrated movie, even though I think it was really good. But like I think he does. Guillermo did things better than that movie and doesn't get enough credit for it. Like,
well, it's like even as big as Del Toro's gotten, he still is that young kid obsessed with monsters in every fucking thing. And what's cool about him is in every movie he does, you can tell he prefers the monsters over the humans, and it's fun to watch. Like there's that reverence. I think the more Peter Jackson goes on, the less he cares about where he came from, the less he cares about those monsters and that kind of stuff. Whereas like Del Toro, like dude, that guy's, and he has like such a youthful like energy about him. Like he gets excited to talk about these kind of things, you know? It's still there in him. It's why like Scott Derrickson and like what that man has done in like turning like, you know what kind of respect you have for someone like that who goes, I can't do your, it's why Edgar Wright is Edgar Wright also, but like turn down Marvel money because they won't let you do your film the way you want to do your film, right? Like, and I still need to see The Last Night in Soho because I love that man, but like, I still don't feel super comfortable going to theaters. But I think Edgar Wright and Guillermo del Toro are both like those kind of like directors that I feel like they hold such a special meaning to me just because they consistently put out such high quality things that they want to do. Like, dude, Baby Driver is one of the weirdest, coolest movies of all time. The editing, the way that the songs are actually a part of the plot. Like Edgar Wright, it doesn't matter if he's making a super small independent film or like a big budget movie. Every single movie he makes is 100% Edgar Wright. Yeah. And like, dude, like, fuck, man, those early Peter Jackson movies, you watch them and you're like, that is Peter Jackson. Nowadays, the last 5-6 movies Peter Jackson's done, if I didn't know who did them, I wouldn't be able to tell you because it just feels like every other fucking movie that comes out.
Yeah. Yeah, and it sucks, man, because it's like, I understand you're making tons of money, but man, it's like, I don't know. That's why I say, like, I would just love if he would go back and give himself like restrictions. Like, I feel like restrictions, especially when it comes to horror, are not. They force you to do things differently. They force you to like look at things differently. It's why I say the scariest movies I've ever seen personally are all fucking low budget indie movies.
Well, it's even like that early Blumhouse model that they were doing. Let's take an established horror director, give them a very small budget, and see what they could come up with. You know, that's what created Insidious. Let's give James Wan $1.5 million to make a movie. Yeah. It makes almost $100 million. Let's give Rob Zombie a couple $1 million, and he comes out with what I think is his best film ever, Lords of Salem. You know, it's like creating these kind of like boxes to put these limitations on these directors, and it makes them think outside of the box. You know, like Rob Zombie can make these huge ass Universal movies like he did with, you know, House of a Thousand Corpses before that was sold and all that debacle. But like he could do that. But like I feel like filmmakers like that, they need to be restrained at some point because it forces them to go back to the drawing board and like I apologize for keep saying the punk rock mentality, but that's what it feels like to me. It feels like, you know, being a teenager and like writing your own punk rock zine about bands you like. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's what Dead Alive is to me. It's a punk rock fucking zine.
Yeah. I mean, dude, it's funny because that movie, like, as I've watched it more as I've gotten older, it reminds me of things like Return of the Living Dead. It reminds me of those things that are just like, you can tell had those restrictions and had those like didn't have huge budgets. And like there's so like that's why like I love the 80s, and I often think that like when it comes to 80s horror, but I often think I connect to a different part of it, or my favorite is like different than a lot of people that love things in the 80s. I mean, dude, I love Friday the 13th. I love the Nightmare on Elm Street movies can be super cool. But like, man, I think about The Thing. I think about I think about like Aliens. I think
Fucking
about all the stuff that
RoboCop.
it's like, RoboCop, yeah. Brooklyn Nine-Nine. It's got everything I want. Extreme violence. Is that all? Yeah, I thought you were listing things. I was. It's the stuff that sticks out to me, and it's like, it doesn't mean that I don't like the other stuff in the 80s, because most 80s, but I think of like From Beyond. I think about like, like the Reanimator stuff, that like the Evil Dead 2, all the stuff that like meant such like, it holds such a special place in my heart. It goes, so much of it is like those practical effects, all those things that were like so good. And then that like the 90s came, and like fucking Jurassic Park and Terminator 2 just like made CG kind of come in and take over things, and which led to things like The Thing, the 2011 Thing, which that and Nightmare on Elm Street are two of the biggest blasphemy movies, the remake. And I know you dude, it's funny, man, how you talk about Nightmare on Elm Street. This is a side tangent, but that how the Freddy thing, and it's just go, every time I even think about Freddy now, I'm like, man, Jerry's right about that. But
yeah, like I try not to like force that on people, because like I'm a firm believer of letting people like what they like. But I find it incredibly hard to revisit so many movies in that series, just because I can't. You know what I mean? Like, the original, the first one, the second one, the fourth one, I like those. They're fun. Yeah. But to be honest, I can't watch many other ones.
Yeah, the first one, we watched it at Halloween time, and that movie's still perfect, like in so many ways. But like, you just said it, and it's very true, man. That movie, when you start getting jokey Freddy instead of like the disgusting, despicable piece of shit he is, you start going, But yeah, and then like, dude, so you talking about, like, I've been talking to you about the Chucky show. And the practical effects in that show have been so awesome, and it reminds me so much of Child's Play 2. And Child's Play 2 is again my favorite of those movies.
Same.
And it's just like, man, you just getting the ability to go in and do stuff like the way it's, I don't know, man. The 80s were a weird time, but like so much cool shit that like I still love to this day came out, and it just makes me so happy. And this movie feels like an 80s movie, just it came out in 92. It's funny though, like I feel like when people talk about, you mean, one of those things is how bad 90s horror is for like a whole, and this movie never gets brought up. You always get like Scream and Candyman, right?
Yeah.
And those are the ones that kind of get a lot of like attention when you say that stuff. But like, there's, man, it just, this movie I think is underrated. I also think, I wonder what percentage of horror people have seen this movie. Like, I don't think it's like, I think it's probably one of those movies that doesn't like, because like this movie isn't hard, like isn't everywhere. You have to go and find it like streaming on YouTube, but like you have to know it's there, right? Like YouTube doesn't advertise it. Like you have to figure out that's where it is. And I don't know, man. This movie is wonderful though. Like it makes me laugh. It makes me like sad. It makes me happy. It makes me like grossed out. Like it goes through all the kind of emotions that are really like a fun ride when you're talking about a horror movie from this time frame, right?
No, I love it. It. I've loved this movie since childhood. It's a movie that like my kids watch a lot of horror films. Like I let them, as long as it's nothing crazy. But it's a movie that like I look forward to them kind of being old enough for me to show them. Yeah. Like this is one of the movies that I can't wait to show my kids once I feel like comfortable enough to. Yeah.
It's so funny, man, because it's like how violence is treated in America compared to like sex. And I have memories of watching Under Siege with my dad when I was a kid. And he didn't care about me watching Steven Seagal murdering people for like an hour and a half. But like when the Playboy model pops out of the cake, he had to cover my eyes. And dude, I watched things like Die Hard so many times as a child, and that movie, dude, I remember running around in kindergarten like wouldn't stop talking about Die Hard as like a kindergartner, and you just go, it's weird how violence and sex are treated in this country specifically. But man, it's we're off on tangents with that, but I really, really do wish more people would see this. And if you're listening to this and you haven't seen this movie, it's on YouTube. Go stream it for free. It's free. You don't have to pay for it. I don't know how legal that is, but like
when the Blu-ray is out of print, like you gotta have to do what you gotta do. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, dude, it's like you go look on. Like I looked for this movie on Apple, which goes into every single thing it has its little greasy fingers in, like all the apps you could download, like Showtime, Cinemax, all these things. And if it's on one of those services, it will tell you this movie isn't on anything besides YouTube. It's not. You can't, like you said, you can't get a Blu-ray copy of it. You can't get like dude. If it comes back into like print, I will fucking buy the shit out of that because this movie cleaned up in that kind of format. It
looks great. It looks great. Yeah. I have the Blu-ray that went out of print. Yeah. It looks great. Yeah.
And it's like, man, it's one of those things where like, man, I have some DVDs. Like I talk about what the fuck is it called? Not Night Breed, the vampire movie. What the fuck is it called?
Night Watch. No,
Night Watch or not. The one of Bill Paxton. What the fuck is it called?
Near Dark.
Near Dark. Yeah. Why did I think Night? But Near Dark is one of those movies that like the only reason I've seen it is because I bought it on DVD when it was like the rare instance of that movie being in print, which I guess that movie's another debacle of a thing. I think a lot of these movies that are this old at this point the rights issues are really fucking strange from them, right?
Yeah.
Like because who owns them in America compared to everywhere else and all this shit. And I wonder if that's one of the problems why Braindead Dead Alive hasn't been, it's not readily available anymore, right?
Yeah, totally. I hope it goes back in print because, this is definitely one that I'd like to champion, even more.
Yeah. Dude, it's so good, man. I just think that this movie it's notorious for being the gore end scene of this movie. And dude, I will admit, when I first saw it like 10 years ago or so, I was like, man, this fucking lawnmower scene is rad. It's so cool and it's so gross and it's so dope. And that movie, that scene is infamous for a reason, right? But man, the rest of this movie is such a joy to watch as like a horror fan. And I'm just like, man, movie's so much fun. It's fun.
It is.
It's what I want in horror.
That's the best word. I think that's the best word to describe it. It's a fun time. Like it's like a roller coaster. It's a splatter flick. It's just it's fun.
Okay, I want to reach out to Peter Jackson and tell him that his next movie should be a Father McGruder prequel and how he got to be the way he was, because man, you could do some fucking dope ass shit. Like I just doing a $10 million film with this guy doing kung fu and fighting something, zombies, vampires, whatever. You could do anything with it and it would be so cool, man. Like, man, I truly do enjoy this movie a lot. And I wish it was like more people have seen it or go out of their way to see it. So, I think this is all with this movie. I don't like this movie is like, it's got a pretty simple premise, right? It's not like a super in-depth, like super deep plot or anything like that. It's a good plot, but like, it's not like something that you have to go like explain all the intricate details. Woman gets bitten by a thing and then lots of gross shit happens afterwards. Oh, by the way, I didn't mention it when I was talking about it. When the fucking rat monkey bites his mother and she just like step on its head and squishes it, it's fucking gnarly. It's pretty cool, man.
Love it.
Like more awesome practical effects. Okay, we are doing the
Wolf of Snow Hollow.
Snow Hollow. Why do I keep wanting to say Snow Hollow, Blood Hollow? I don't know. I don't know why it's in my. You ever get weird titles in your head and like fuck around with like series of words? Yeah, we're gonna watch that. I'm talking. So I met a cool woman who does she does a true crime podcast, and talking to her about she wanted to do a collaboration and come on and talk about what made someone do something in a horror movie, like a killer kind of thing. And I don't know
would be a
everything.
Perfect one for that.
Yeah, and that's why I thought that it would be good for that. So we'll talk about it after. So we're gonna reach out to her, or I'm gonna reach out to her and see she wants to come talk. She lives probably right around your area too. She's in your area of California, I think. But okay, man. Jerry, I blast talking about this movie. I mean, it's always a blast talking movies.
No, definitely, dude. I'm stoked.
Okay. Jerry is just okay everywhere on Twitter. We remember Jerry's EP, Rainy Days for Ghosts, is out and is awesome. So go listen to that. I've been putting the links I said like in the episode notes. Check that out, and it's on his Twitter also. His wife's book is called Days with Ghosts. It's on Amazon, so go check that out. It's $8.99, I think is what it.
Yeah, $8.99, or I think $1.99 for the ebook. But yeah, dude, everyone who has bought her book so far, thank you so much. It's actually doing pretty good, which is cool. But yeah, it means a lot. Yeah, buy the book. Buy it for your kids. Buy it for yourself. If you don't like it, go fuck yourself. Buy another copy.
And your wife is cool people, man. I had a really nice time meeting her when we were out there. So, the podcast has been picking up. More people are listening, and I'm fucking stoked about it. So, thanks so much for listening. If you guys want to leave us a 5-star review somewhere, it'd be awesome. Yeah, we're murdermoose.com, murdermoosepod on Twitter, and I'm Rod_Johnston on Twitter. So we have a Discord, but that's not like, it doesn't get used all that much. So if you want to join, you can come in and throw suggestions on Twitter or whatever. But yeah. So guys, thank you so much for listening. We will catch you next week with The Wolf of Snow Hollow. Snow Hollow, right?
Yep.
Why can't think of the word title of that fucking movie well enough, but catch you guys later. Have a good one. Bye.